Well, this one's gonna make you angry. Sunny Hostin has truly outdone herself this time with the most absurd and offensive comparison yet, literally putting the events of J6 on the same plane as the worst crimes of World War II, slavery, and the attacks of September 11th. But believe it or not, this is actually more common on the far left than you might think, and you need to see it for yourself before I tell you a full story.
I think we need to find moral clarity, in this country. And I just remember after January 6th, you had someone like Mitch McConnell placing the blame on January 6th where it belonged, squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders. And then you started seeing people backtrack that and losing their moral center. You had Condoleezza Rice, I believe, on this very show saying, we need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery, we need to never forget because past becomes prologue if you forget any race.
My first thought was, what an insult to the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people that have actually laid their lives down for this country to be used as a cheap political talking point. And that too by someone raking in millions of dollars while being shielded from any of the real voter issues in this country other than her exaggerated reading of a protest 4 years ago that got out of control. By the way, we expose these mainstream media tricks like no one else, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss out. Now, I think there's more than an attempt by the establishment left to almost commemorate the events of that day by creating a whole media wave on the 6th of January every year, or at least The View has been trying to do that for the past 3 years, and the reason is purely political, just as you saw Kamala Harris use it as a baton in her concession speech to Trump in November. But forget all of that for a moment and imagine how all of this sounds to the everyday American that is struggling to keep enough money in their pocket or walk the street safely. I know Sunny Hostin has frequently had on-air friction with Alyssa Farah-Griffin, but I'm glad Alyssa pulled her back to reality.
I have to say, I think there were warning signs, though, that we would be where we are today. And most Americans were not comfortable with January 6th. They thought it was bad. They thought it was awful. But for 4 years, they said, guys, we are hurting. The cost of living is too high. We are concerned about the border. I predicted here 6 months ago we were careening to Donald Trump's inauguration. People needed to listen that, yes, democracy matters, but if you can't pay your bills, it's hard to care about something as nebulous as democracy. And I think that the warning signs were there. And I say this with due respect to Joe Biden. I didn't disagree with a word he said in that op-ed, but people were saying we have concern about your age. He waited till August and then gave Kamala Harris this runway to run for president. All the warning signs were there. This was Democrats. They had the chance to stop Donald Trump from being inaugurated. And here we are. But I hope people don't. I hope the whitewashing of January 6th ends. It wasn't right. It never will be, no matter how much people lie about it. But this was avoidable in my mind.
Finally, some semblance of sanity. The truth is, when you're desperate, your life's proximal problems are a much bigger deciding factor of who deserves your vote rather than an abstract political notion. And here's a question that needs to be put to the likes of Sunny Hostin after the results of the recent election. If Donald Trump is the kind of insurrectionist threat to democracy that she's making him out to be, how poorly must the voters think about Democrat policies to still vote for the guy? Now, I remember something that Vivek Ramaswamy said a couple of years ago that explains both of these political phenomena. We've seen, quote, if you tell people they can't speak, they scream. If you tell them they can't scream, they tear things down. Free speech is a precondition for peace. In some sense, Donald Trump's sway with the independent and even center-left voters was a rebellion against an entrenched establishment in the Democratic Party. And that lack of trust has simply eroded the memory of a few hours on J6 when the only person who actually lost their lives was Ashley Babbitt, which was sad, but she was also a Trump supporter shot by the Capitol Police. And of course, that's nothing to take lightly. Her life is tragically taken short, but there have just been a lot of these attempts to turn J6 into this day of mourning by the left, or make martyrs out of the people that stopped a supposed insurrection, instead of the people who actually took the lives of those who supported Trump. And this includes people up top in the Democratic Party, including the Vice President Kamala Harris, as well as prominent Democrat strategists like Steve Schmidt, who had the Lincoln Center, who literally said J6 was worse than Pearl Harbor.
That were desecrated on that day, incited by a single man who assaulted the Constitution of the United States. We were attacked by a foreign enemy on September 11th of 2001. The casualties were horrendous, as they were on December 7th of 1941, but the attack on January 6th was more severe also than the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Fellow Americans, good morning. Certain dates echo throughout history, including dates that instantly remind all who have lived through them where they were and what they were doing when our democracy came under assault. Dates that occupy not only a place on our calendars, but a place in our collective memory. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021.
Yes, it does sound as absurd as ever now in hindsight, especially as these are the exact kind of political strategy that has lost Democrats an election. Not just that, the erosion of trust that has happened in these last 4 years with news like the one that we had about a month ago when a DOJ watchdog admitted that the FBI had 26 informants in plain clothes among the crowd on J6, even engaged in illegal activities like breaking into the buildings, and that's something that the FBI had refused to answer for several years prior. No wonder no one trusts the official narrative anymore until it all fades from public memory. And that's the only explanation why a panel like The View would still be fixated on that day, as if that's the only thing that has happened in the last 4 years. I think what Ana Navarro said was truly the icing on the cake of just how out of touch the panel sounded with the real voting issues for Americans.
I'm incredibly grateful to the January 6th committee. I'm incredibly grateful to the members of that committee, including Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, the two Republicans who agreed to serve on it, because no matter how much they try to rewrite it, erase it, whitewash it, just lie about it, the truth is in that report, and it will stand. Record. It will stand the test of time. I'm also very grateful to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for putting democracy first, Constitution first. A few days ago, Kamala Harris was swearing in as vice president. She swears in the newly elected senators. It included senators like Ted Cruz. It included senators like Dave McCormick from Pennsylvania, who attacked her. But you see, it's not about her. It's about the Constitution.
And every vice president
democracy.
does that.
And she's going to perform her duty today. And she's not just the vice president. She's also the woman who lost to Donald Trump. But she is a mature adult, not a toddler having a tantrum. She is a leader who understands that it is country first. She's going to go to the swearing in and watch him swear in, unlike what he did.
See what I mean? When you're far removed from it, all politics is like a chess game of moving a few pieces around to win, and common Americans announced in this election that they weren't going to play this game anymore. But let me know in the comments how you see the political landscape evolving next, because what happens in the next year is going to decide the trajectory for these parties until 2028.